shoot, shoot, don't, shoot, shoot, don't, shoot, 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 don't, shoot, shoot, don't, shoot, shoot, don't, shoot, 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 shoot.
There we go. I didn't want to talk over the intro, but it's hey, Ren City. How's it going? Back at it. We're doing our NBA, WNBA recaps. I'm going to break down the NBA finals, how we've got here, and how I think it's going to end. I mean, I did predict how we'd get here, but let's talk about it. Like I said, my name's Ren City, host of Sports and Shorts of Sorts. This is the spinoff, the podcast where we just talk hoops, and we've had some entertaining ball. Like I said, I did predict this finals, Celtics and Mavericks, before the playoffs started, but I did not predict how it was going to go. This is much different than what I expected. But before we go there, I have to mention sad news in the basketball community. One of the most iconic figures in the NBA, Jerry West, passed away at the age of 86. The man whose pose was captured in a photo and whose silhouette would become the NBA logo. It's been like that since 1969. And there's no better person to carry the burden of the logo. He's like the Atlas of the NBA. I talked about West at great lengths in my episode 44 of my podcast, Sports and Shorts of Sorts, where with each episode we shout out the jersey number that coincides. And with episode 44, you had to give love to the logo. Talked about him to great lengths, so if you want to tune into that, check it out. It's great. His accolades are crazy, like winning finals MVP on a losing team. Only person to do that. Only person to make the Basketball Hall of Fame as a contributor, a player, and as a member of the USA basketball team. Three times he made it in. It's fortunate he won't be able to be there for his third enshrinement. That'll be happening later this year. And just a tough loss, as we just lost Bill Walton a few weeks ago, which I gave shout out to on episode 32. Tons of praise for those guys. But there's another big man passing that, no one was really talking about as much. Chet Walker, Basketball Hall of Famer. In hindsight, a guy I probably should have gave more love to on episode 25. An underrated player that won a title with the Sixers, put up big numbers with the Chicago Bulls. May all three of those greats rest in peace. Like I said, a rough few weeks for the NBA alumni, but we'll segue from those tragedies into the NBA Finals, which could be a tragedy depending on who you're cheering for. But tons of excitement. We're going into game one of the finals. Long break for both teams, for everybody wanting to watch hoops. The Mavericks were on the road in Boston to face off with the Celtics. Celtics are thrilled to have the services of Kristaps Porzingis back. The Latvian big man missed the last 10 games of the playoffs, and he was coming off the bench. But wow, what an impact he had. He came out on fire, killing it on both ends of the floor, swatting shots, hitting shots. All the Celtics were clicking. Jason Tatum's shot wasn't falling, but the Celtics came together as a team and jumped out on the Mavericks. Luka was doing it on the offensive side, leading the team in scoring with 30 points. And the Mavs cut into the Celtics lead in the third quarter, but then the Celtics were going to run, put the game out of reach. Former Celtic Kyrie Irving was hearing it from the crowd, did not have a normal Kyrie game that we're used to seeing in the finals. He finished the game with only 12 points, while the Celtics had all their starters finish in double figures. Plus, you had Porzingis' 20 off the bench. A dominant performance by the Celtics to open the series 1-0. Game 2 was also in Boston. The Mavericks came out much better than they had in the first game. Doncic came out great and was looking like he was going to get a little more help from his teammates. All the Mavericks would score in double figures, all their starters, sorry. The Celtics had the number one record in the NBA for a reason, and Drew Holiday really showed his worth. Tatum was still struggling with his shot, but he was setting people up with precision, and Holiday was a big beneficiary of that. He finished with 26 points and 11 rebounds in the game, finishing when asked. He played elite defense, everything he could do for the team, and his fellow second-team all-defensive partner, Derek White, was huge too. His chase-down block late in the game really seemed to put the Celtics over the edge. Jaylen Brown was clutch in this one. His big shots were massive. He had 21.7 dimes. Luka had 32 points, 11 boards, and 11 dimes. The first triple-double in the finals by a Maverick. And I said he had some help, but it wasn't enough. Kyrie again finished below his average with only 16 points. Celtics did what they needed to do, holding off the Mavericks, and took game 2. I mentioned Tatum's shooting struggles. He finished with 19 points, 12 dimes, and 9 boards. So even though his shot wasn't going, he was doing everything he needed for his team, finding the right guys in the right situations that really impacted the game. Plus the defense of the Celtics. Whoa! They're locked in. when they are locked in, it's unreal. They're giving up no lobs to the Mavs, which were easy points for them through these whole playoffs. They're giving no room to the Mavericks shooters, giving them no space. It's one thing to make a good defensive scheme, but it's another to actually follow through on it. The only bad event for the Celtics was an awkward fall by Porzingis, where he only had 12 points and 2 blocks in 23 minutes, and he'd leave and not return. And game 3, which shifted Dallas in what was looking like a must win, and it felt like it because no team in NBA history had ever come back from a 3-0 series deficit. And the Celtics would be without Porzingis, who they just got back, but like I said, picked up an injury in game 2. And it's a doozy of one. I'll try to get this said properly. It's a very rare leg injury, I guess. A torn medial retinaculum allowing dislocation of the posterior tibialis tendon in his left leg. Obviously, that meant not a lot to me. I knew some of it, but I had to dig in a little deeper. And the medial retinaculum, if I'm getting this right, is connective tissue that serves as the roof of the tarsal tunnel. It anchors multiple structures in place. So if that retinaculum is torn, the tendon can shift out of place, causing pain and instability to the ankle and foot, which is not very pleasant and sounds like it might be difficult to heal. So there's your Ren City medical talk. All those days of playing Dr. Mario pulled off. But digging more into this rare injury, I think Porzingis is done this finals. He didn't play game 3. I think he's done. But the Mavericks, they felt the buzz from the home crowd, came out jumping on the Celtics. The Celtics haven't lost a road game all playoffs, and they were looking to get right back into the game and the Mavs only had a 1-point lead at halftime. Big difference in the first 2 games was the shooting of Tatum. He was slumping, not in this game. He was on fire. And the third quarter was an absolute disaster for the Mavericks as they were outscored 35-19 by the Celtics in the third quarter. And the Celtics had a 21-point lead with under 11 minutes to go. But Kyrie Irving was playing like the Kyrie we are used to, and his play sparked a huge comeback, which could have been one of the largest in the NBA in over 25 years. But the physical game was really starting to get to players, mostly Luka Doncic, who put up getting good scoring numbers, but was in total frustration mode by the end of the game. He ended up fouling out on the game, trying to take a block on a fast break by Jaylen Brown. He took the bump, screamed at the bench, fucking challenge it. It was a bad challenge. Like, looking at the replay, they're not going to win that. Doncic was still moving. Luka fouled out. Kyrie put the team on his back, and he was hitting crazy shots. Like one of the most gifted offensive players ever. He has to be. He had a team-high 35. P.J. Washington had one of his better game of the series, but despite that, the Celtics did enough to withstand the late comeback. Jaylen Brown, again, clutch shots in this. Celtics hung on to win 106-99 in Dallas. 10th win in a row in these playoffs for the Celtics. 7-0 on the road. You could sense the relief in the dynamic duo of Brown and Tatum. I mentioned Tatum's better shooting night. 31 points, 6 boards, 5 dimes. Jaylen Brown also 30 points with 8 boards and 8 dimes. With that win, the Celtics now lead 3-0 in the finals. And like I said earlier, no NBA team has ever come back from 3 down to win a series. And you're like, has this ever happened? Yes, the only occurrences have happened from a 3-0 deficit. Not in the NBA, but it's happened in the Major League Baseball and in NHL. In the MLB, the 2004 Boston Red Sox came back from 3 down to beat the New York Yankees. What a crazy series that was. And they'd end up going on to the World Series there. In the NHL, it's happened 4 times. The first occurrence was probably the craziest in the 1942 Stanley Cup Finals. The Maple Leafs overcame a 3-0 deficit to win 4 straight and beat the Red Wings back when the Leafs were winning cups. It happened again in 1975 when the Islanders won 4 straight to overcome a 3-0 deficit against the Penguins. And they tried to do it in the very next round, going down 3-0 to the Flyers, tying it and forcing a Game 7, which they lost. But speaking of the Flyers, in 2010, they'd come back from a 3-0 hole to beat the Bruins in the first round of the playoffs. And the most recent was in 2014 when the Los Angeles Kings came back from 3-0 to beat the San Jose Sharks in the first round. So now that you have a little Ren City playoff history involving 3-0 series deficits, That brings us to tonight's game. Friday, June 14th. Boston takes their unbeaten playoff road record into Dallas, where it is literally now a must-win for the Mavericks. If they lose, they're going home via a broom, and the Celtics move in the sole position with the most NBA championships, putting them at 18, which would be one above their rivals, Los Angeles Lakers, at 17. Now, I know earlier I reminded everyone, again, how I predicted these two teams would make the finals, but I thought this would go 6 games, and I'm a little hesitant to stand by that right now. It's hard for me not to pick the Celtics tonight. I mean, they say closeout games are the hardest to win, and the Mavericks have two dudes that excelled when they are needed the most. So I'm expecting a big night out of Luka and Kyrie, but who's going to be the third scorer? I don't know. I really like what I've seen out of Dante Exum. He's had limited minutes with that huge dunk in Game 3, got the crowd going, and he disappeared again. I hope Jason Kidd puts him out there. I'd like to see him on the floor. Longer defender, can maybe push the ball a bit. We'll see what's coming from that. And stats were shown via GetUp that Luka Doncic is allowing the most blow-bys in a playoff series right now. These entire playoffs, he's been attacked on the defensive end. And like Jason Kidd said after Game 3, he's got a big target on him right now, and he's going to have to guard better. It's asking a lot out of a guy who carries a team offensively and is really hurting injury-wise. But, I mean, a lot of people are, too. But Kidd also mentioned that Luka needs help offensively, so maybe he can take a few offensive sets off and working on the defensive end. But with all that said, and I'm saying all this, I do feel the sweep's coming now. I didn't want to go there, but even without Porzingis, Celtics are just playing better than the Mavericks. From the defensive pressure to the clutch shot making, the Celtics have been shit on during the Jays era, the Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown era. But this is their time to finally get that big monkey off their back. The addition of Drew Holiday and the earlier acquisition prior of Derek White, that's what's making the difference. And like I said in my pre-playoffs predictions, I had the series happening, but I had Jason Tatum winning the finals MVP. But I think it's going to go to his teammate Jaylen Brown. And that's no fault of Tatum. He's really elevated his game coming off his Larry Bird trophy winning MVP in the Eastern Conference finals. I think he's going to win the finals MVP as well. So I hate to put the nail in the coffin on this NBA season, but I have the Celtics raising the Larry O'Brien tonight. One last mention from the NBA was the vacancy of the Los Angeles Lakers head coach position. Said the Lakers had targeted UConn head coach Dan Hurley and offered him a large contract, but the back-to-back NCAA championship winner declined the offer and decided to stay at Connecticut and look to three-peat. And with the NBA possibly coming to an end here, join us on the WNBA train. Whoop, whoop. It's been an exciting season thus far, and with more eyes on the league than ever, getting all kinds of storylines that are coming from off the court, some on the court, which is good. But on this recap, we'll break down the past week of WNBA hoops, recapping each team's week, and then jumping to some of these big conversations we're having about the league. All the past week's games were part of the Commissioner's Cup. Those games all count towards the regular season win-loss record, as well towards the Commissioner's Cup table. And after the 5 games were played by each team, the 2 top teams in each conference advanced to the Commissioner's Cup Finals, which will be played June 25th. I'll let you know who's playing in there after we get through this. Starting in the East, much like I did throughout my NBA recaps this season, we'll start in the East with the conference-leading Connecticut Sun. They hosted the New York Liberty with a perfect 9-0 record. It was a fantastic matchup of last year's WNBA semifinals. The visiting Liberty would jump out to an early lead, but the Sun got right back into it. We were tied at halftime. It was a close third quarter, but in the fourth, the Liberty would pull away, and it would be former Sun Jonquel Jones that stuck it to her old team, finishing with 22 points, 8 boards, 5 dimes, and 4 blocks. Combine that with Sabrina Ionescu's game-high 24 points, and the Liberty gave the Sun the first loss of the season, a big win in the Commissioner's Cup. All of Connecticut's starters scored in double figures, and Tiffany Mitchell had 12 off the bench, but it just was not enough to overcome the Liberty. The Sun would then host the Indiana Fever in their next game, and it looked like they took off the frustration of their first loss of the season out on the Fever. They dominated Indiana, and it wasn't close. Dejanay Carrington did it on both ends of the court, scoring efficiently, finishing the game with a game-high 22 points, frustrating the hell out of Caitlin Clark, and after she picked up a foul on Clark, she she mimicked her with a little flopping motion. Like I said, they beat them physically, mentally. The Sun just really outmatched the Fever in that one. And the final Commissioner's Cup game for Connecticut was on the road in Chicago to take on the Sky. In their earlier matchup, Alyssa Thomas was ejected when they took on the Sky after she threw rookie Angel Reese to the ground. But this time she stayed in the game, and talk about a great front court battle. Thomas, 20.7 boards, while Angel Reese had a double-double of her own, 20 points, 10 boards. One hell of a battle with the rookie going up against one of the best players in the league. It was a close game throughout, but the veteran play of the Sun proved to be the difference late in the game. Connecticut's Brianna Jones, 18 points, Duana Bonner at 16. Marina Mabry struggled again for the Sky, and Kennedy Carter chipped in, but it was a big win for the Sun. You know, they wrapped up Commissioner's play, and they sit atop the East with 11-1 record. Right there with the Connecticut Sun in the East are those New York Liberty I mentioned earlier. Their first game after last episode was on the road against the Atlanta Dream. It was all about MVP, last year's MVP, Brianna Stewart in this one. She went off 25 points, 10 boards, 5 dimes, nice double-double for her. She had great help from Lainey Hamilton scoring 15, and Jonquel Jones and Ionescu each chipped in 10 as they cruised to a 17-point victory. And the following game was that one I alluded to earlier against the Sun, where the Liberty gave Connecticut their first loss of the season. I spoke of how great Jonquel Jones was in that one, which was nice to see after last week's podcast where I said she is too good to be getting the amount of touches she's getting. She needs more. When she's rolling, this team hits another gear. The Liberty wrapped up their Commissioner's Cup play, hosting the Washington Mystics. The Mystics were coming in winless, but you would never have known it. It was a tight game throughout, with the Liberty again needing a huge night out of Jonquel Jones. She followed up her big game against Connecticut by dropping 29 points, 8 boards, and 2 blocks. Ionescu shot great, going 3 for 4 from downtown, finishing with 19 boards, 8 dimes, and 6 boards. Brianna Stewart struggled from the field, finishing with 14 points, but her teammates all picked up the slack, including 12 points off the bench by Leonie Fibic, and the Liberty won 93-88, sitting just behind the Sun with one more loss, and as I said, with 11-2 record. After those two juggernauts in the East, there was a bit of a drop-off to the next tier of teams. The Atlanta Dream currently have a 5-6 record on the season. They hosted the Liberty, as alluded to earlier, and took a beating, losing by 17 at home. Alicia Gray led the way for the Dream with 16 points, but Ryan Howard was really ineffective, finishing with only 11 points on a rough shooting night. The Dream's next game would be on the road to play the Chicago Sky, a much better performance by Atlanta. The vet, Tina Charles, going up against the rookie front court of the Sky and showing she's still got it, scoring a game-high 22 points and grabbing 7 rebounds. Her front court teammate, Cheyenne Parker-Tias, was a huge in this game as well, scoring 18 points and 4 boards and dimes. That front court really stepped up and showed the rookies how to do it. I mean, Angel Reese did not back down, and she put up big numbers in the loss, but it was all about the Dream's front court. They played well. Ryan Howard struggled again, finishing with only 10 points, and Alicia Gray didn't shoot very well either, but the Dream picked up the 9-point win, and that's all that really mattered, and the Dream were feeling good. You know, had picked up a road win, returned home to host the winless Mystics, except I don't think they were expecting the return of Brittany Sykes from her ankle injury, which has kept her out the last 10 games. Washington came out and jumped on the Dream, and the Dream quickly became a nightmare. Ryan Howard shot much better for the Dream, but she only took 8 shots and scored 16. She needed to be much more aggressive. She didn't get much help. That front court that was so good against the Sky was non-existent. An embarrassing home loss to a team that hadn't won all season. The Dream would wrap up their Commissioner's Cup games with a road trip to Indiana to take on the Fever, and the Fever jumped on the Dream early. But the Dream stayed in this game and fought throughout. Ryan Howard built off her previous game's performance and continued to shoot well, finishing with 26 points on the night. Tina Charles really struggled going up against Aaliyah Boston. Parker-Tias seemed to be a better option off the bench, and she matched up a little better, but the Dream didn't get much scoring anywhere else, and they just could not handle Boston inside. And the Dream would go on a late run, but couldn't get over the hump, and they'd lose by 7 points to the Fever. Next up in the East is the Chicago Sky with a 4-7 record. They went on the road to take on the then winless Mystics. The Mystics took a 9-point lead in the halftime, but Angel Reese did what Angel Reese does, and she grabbed a double-double, 16 points, 11 boards, 5 steals, 3 dimes. But man, Kennedy Carter off the pine 25 points off the bench, finishing with plus 19 in the game. She was the difference in this game as the Sky left Washington, D.C. with a 79-71 win. The Sky then hosted the Dream, as I alluded to earlier, and the Dream outplayed the Sky late to secure the win, but big shout out again to Angel Reese. She was going up against a very tough front court and holding her own, grabbing another double-double, 13 points, 13 points with those 5 steals. Fellow rookie Camilla Cardoso and Dana Evans, they each clicked in 13. But Marina Mabry, man, she struggled with her shot again, only scoring 12 on 4 for 12 shooting. And their last Commissioner Cup game for Chicago was a home game against the Connecticut Sun, which I mentioned earlier. And again, here I am praising Angel Reese. We're going up against a very tough front court, putting up 20 points, 10 rebound, double-double. She's holding her own and then some. I mean, it's a really good draft class, but right now she's got to be emerging as the current leader for Rookie of the Year, you'd think. Marina Mabry, again, another abysmal shooting night, 3 for 13. When she's not clicking, this team seems to struggle. Her inability to knock down shots lately is hurting this team. And I mean, Reese has been playing great inside. The only upside of all Mabry's missed shots is it's helping Angel Reese's rebounding numbers. But one of the busiest teams this season has been the Indiana Fever. Their 4-10 record on the season. And they go through their Commissioner Cups games. They were in a tough battle with the then winless Washington Mystics, and we'd probably see the best game out of Caitlin Clark in her rookie season so far, going 7 for 13 from downtown on her way to 30 points, also throwing in 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and 4 steals. Still a lot of turnovers with 8, but she looked way more comfortable in that game. Kelsey Mitchell scored 16. Aaliyah Boston and Alyssa Smith each scored 10. Smith had a double-double with 10 boards as well. Late in the game, it looked like the Mystics could maybe steal it, but the Fever held on to secure the road win. The Fever then went on the road to face the Sun, coming off their first loss of the season. And like I mentioned earlier, Connecticut just took it to the Fever. I mentioned how Carrington had a fantastic game for the Sun and mocked Clark on her flopping. She also stripped Clark and hit a buzzer beater. It was just not a good game for the Fever. Boston led the way for the Indiana team with 14 points, 12 boards, and 5 dimes. Clark finished with only 10 points, and only Lexi Hall off the bench with 10 was the other scorer in double figures. Indiana's last Commissioner's Cup game was at home against Atlanta, which I mentioned earlier, and Aaliyah Boston dominating that game. 27 points, 13 rebounds against a good front court. Taking it to the former MVP of the league, Tina Charles, is crazy. Not an easy thing to do. Just reminds you how good last year's Rookie of the Year is. Kelsey Mitchell had 24 points. Her constant attack of the paint really had the Dream on their toes. Caitlin Clark's shot wasn't falling, but she was dishing it out with 6 dimes. But again, the turnovers, 7. She's got to really limit that. I know she has the ball a lot, but that's a lot of turnovers. You got to maybe stop those risky passes, reel it in a bit, you know. Coaching staff needs to check the tapes, though, because late in this game, Caitlin Clark in Boston was awesome to watch. Get them rolling in a pick and roll, something. Get them doing some more 1-2 options, and when that's covered, hit Mitchell, who just drives to the hoop. That leaves Alyssa Smith to roam free. She doesn't always need the ball to be effective. She can get it, and when she does something good with it, but you don't have to force it to her. Hope maybe this game is a turning point for the Fever, and I know Caitlin Clark's #1 overall pick. She's bringing everybody in, which is awesome for the league, but this is still Aaliyah Boston's team, I think. You got to feed her. When they feed her, it takes pressure off Clark, and I think it really makes the team better, but we'll see what happens. We'll wrap up the East here with the Washington Mystics. 1-12 as they finally got that first win of the season. They got out to a great start against the Chicago Sky, which I mentioned earlier. And Canadian rookie out of UConn, Aaliyah Edwards, balled out. Nice double-double of 23 points and 14 rebounds with 4 blocked shots to boot. And that's going up against Angel Reese, but she didn't get much help, and the Mystics lost the lead in that game and lost the game. The Mystics were still looking for that first win, and they were big underdogs going up against the Liberty. And I talked about in the Liberty portion, this was a close one, and New York's veteran savvy late in the game really held on for the 93-88 win. Starting 5 for the Mystics struggles, but the bench players stood up. Jade Melbourne, 20 points, 8 rebounds, 7 dimes off the bench. 21 points from Jade Melbourne, and 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 dimes from Maisha Hines Allen. So that was really good production from the bench. When you're getting 41 points off the bench, wow. The Mystics played their last Commissioner's Cup game in Atlanta, hoping for that first win. And I mentioned Brittany Sykes returned from her 10-game absence, and wow, she was like a jolt of lightning coming into the lineup. They looked faster, crisper, more confident. Sykes led the way with 18 points and 4 dimes. Tied with her on points with Ariel Atkins, who also had 5 assists and 4 boards. Rookie Julie Vanloo came off the bench, scored 11 points, and just a great team win. It all started with Brittany Sykes, and with her back in the lineup, you can expect the Mystics to be much more competitive. And if you're thinking you're going to get a win when you look at their record, they'll catch you off guard. With all that going on in the East, we're now going to the West. With who's leading the West at this point? The Minnesota Lynx, currently sitting atop with 9-3 record. They had a tough matchup going into Phoenix to face the Mercury, especially with Brittany Griner playing her first game of the season with the Mercury. But what a game, back and forth, both teams making big shots. Kayla McBride leading the way with Minnesota with 25 points and 5 boards. Minnesota superstar Nafisa Collier, 20 points, 12 boards, 6 dimes. The Lynx looked to have it wrapped up, but a late surge by Phoenix and then a game winner by Kalia Copper with 0.7 seconds left gave the Mercury an 81-80 win over Minnesota. The Lynx would return home and host a very tough Seattle team, and Seattle took the lead in the halftime, but Minnesota dominated the second half, outscoring the Storm 47-23. The Lynx did it on both sides of the ball, but Kayla McBride again shooting lights out, 7 for 10 from downtown, scoring 32 points. Collier another double-double, 19 points, 14 boards. Shout out to Canadian Bridget Carlton, scored 13 points, and the Lynx would win by 19 in that. Minnesota would then go into Las Vegas for their last Commissioner's Cup game with potential final implications on the line with a matchup with the Aces. And the Lynx used maybe this game as a barometer to see how they match up with the last year's champions. After a close first quarter, Minnesota just took over, outscoring the Aces 30-17 in the second quarter. And there were spurts where you thought the Aces would come back, but the Lynx would flex on them and increase their lead. A real team performance where all the starters scored at least 15 points, with Stanford's Alana Smith leading the way with 18 points. It's very impressive to see the defensive pressure the Lynx put on the Aces, and they felt great leaving Sin City with a 14-point win. Just behind the Lynx in the West are the Seattle Storm. They have a 9-4 record. Storm went into Vegas to take on defending champion Aces, and this was a great battle throughout. Both teams going at it. Asia Wilson doing all she can for the Aces, but the Storm clouds were rolling. Last year's leading scorer, Jewel Lloyd, led the way with 25 points, 9 boards. Skylar Diggins-Smith's fitting great in Seattle, balling out with 21 points, 7 dimes. Plus the dominant front court of Naneka Aguamike, 12 points and 11 boards, and Ezi Megbabor, 14 points, 15 boards, 5 dimes and 3 blocks. She's a stat filler. This was a 13-point road win. After the game, Asia Wilson referred to Seattle as a super team. And as the kids say, no cap on that one. The Storm tried to take that momentum into Minnesota, but just as I talked about, the Lynx dominated the Storm. Jewel Lloyd didn't shoot the greatest, but finished with 25.7 boards. No other Storm player reached double figures, and that's probably a big reason why the Lynx won by 19. I mean, it's tough to win a game when you're shooting 18% from 3. Yikes. The Storm would return to the Northwest to host the Los Angeles Sparks. The big three of the Storm really took over. Naneka Aguamike lit it up against the only other team she has ever played for in the WNBA, spending her entire WNBA career with the Sparks before coming to Seattle this season. She grabbed 26 points and 8 rebounds against her former team. Jewel Lloyd scoring 21, grabbing 6 boards. Diggins-Smith, 19 points, 6 dimes, 5 boards. Ezi again showing why she's one of the best centers in the league, only scoring 8, but grabbing 13 boards, dishing out 4 dimes, and swatting 3 blocks. The Storm would wrap up their Commissioner's Cup game by going on the road to face the Dallas Wings. Another great team effort with contributions coming from everywhere, and the Storm are just too much for the depleted Wings. Diggins-Smith led the way with 21 points, 6 dimes. Lloyd, 19 points, 6 assists, 4 steals. Aguamike, 17 points, 6 boards. Ezi Megbagor, double-double, 10 and 10 with 4 steals, 3 dimes, 2 blocks. And I'm thinking Asia Wilson was onto something with the super team comment. This team looks like a threat to win a title maybe this year. We'll go from Seattle to the Las Vegas Aces, who have a 6-5 record and are just 1 loss away from equalizing their entire total from last season. Talked about the Storm swooping into Vegas and beating up on the Aces to win 78-65, but you couldn't fault Asia Wilson. 29 points, 11 rebounds, 3 blocks. She was the reason the Aces were in the game. Kelsey Plummet, 18 points, but no other ace scored over 5 points. Jackie Young struggled. It was a beatdown where, as I said, Wilson said that the Storm could be a super team. The Aces would go on the West Coast to take on the Sparks, where they were missing Jackie Young for the game. Rookie Kate Martin would start in her place, and the rookie from Iowa played pretty well, getting 13 points, 4 boards, 3 dimes. Obviously, Asia Wilson led the way for the Aces, scoring 31 points, 8 boards, 6 blocks, 4 dimes. She was doing it all, but late, the Sparks made bigger plays when they mattered, and they gave the Aces another loss. Kelsey Plum had 24 points and 5 dimes, while Tiffany Hayes scored 17 off the bench, but the Sparks collective was enough to shock the Aces. The Aces would then host the Lynx in that battle of the Western powerhouses I talked about, where the Lynx came in the Aces' house and just beat up on them. Asia Wilson again did it all. 28 points, 8 rebounds, but she got not a lot of help. Plum had 13, and off the bench, Gustafson and Tiffany Hayes. Gustafson scored 11, Hayes had 10. It was just another tough outing where the Aces, where they're really showing that they're missing Chelsea Gray. But there's talk she could be coming back soon. And the Aces would wrap up their Commissioner's Cup game against the Mercury. After going down early, Wilson would put another page in her MVP case, going up against one of the better defenders in the league, and Brittany Griner, and dropping 32 points, 15 boards, 2 blocks. Jackie Young finally looked like Jackie Young again, scoring 34 points while grabbing 8 boards and dishing out 4 dimes. Kelsey Plum had 16 with 5 dimes, and the Aces battled back to win on the road against Phoenix. Like I said, there were talk Gray will be back soon, and that could help this Aces team get on track because they were on a 3-game losing streak, which was their longest since 2019. Sticking with Desert Heat, we'll leave Las Vegas to go to Phoenix, where the Mercury are 6-5 in a tough Western Conference this year. I mentioned that wild game between Minnesota and Mercury in Phoenix, where Brittany Griner played her first game of the season, and she fit in seamlessly. She had 3 turnovers, but she also scored 11 points and grabbed 4 boards in 21 minutes. But the biggest story, as it's been all season for the Mercury, the play of Kalea Copper. Wow, so efficient from the field, scoring 34 points, grabbing 6 boards, and with the Mercury down 2, with just seconds to go, she'd hit a 3-pointer with 0.7 seconds left to give the Mercury a 1-point lead. I mean, the Sky are really missing her in Chicago right now. She's one of the favorite players of mine to watch this year. Well, she has been for the past few seasons, but it's great to see what she's doing in Phoenix. The Mercury would go into Dallas, take on the Wings, and it was a good game going back and forth down the stretch where we'd go to overtime, and it looked like the Mercury would seal it after Brittany Griner put the Mercury up with 21 seconds left. But after Dallas's Agunbawale missed a 3-pointer, McCowan would put a putback with 11 seconds left to force double overtime, where that name again, Kalea Copper, would score 8 of her game-high 29 points to lead the Mercury to a 97-90 double overtime win. Griner had 24 points, 9 boards, 5 dimes, and 2 blocks. Diana Taurasi struggled from downtown, only hitting 2 for 11 from outside, but she had 20 points, 7 boards, 7 dimes. That was a big win for the Mercury. And the Mercury's last Commissioner Cup game was a date with the Las Vegas Aces that I mentioned, and the Mercury had jumped out to a big lead, but the Aces exploded in the second quarter, outscoring Phoenix 42-23. The second half was much closer, where it could have gone either way, but the Aces were a little more clutch down the stretch. Brittany Griner is definitely finding her groove since coming back, dropping 25 points and 9 boards. Diana Taurasi scored 22, and Kalea Copper had an off game by her standards, only scoring 18. We'll head to La La Land, where the Sparks have a 4-8 record. They hosted the Wings, and despite going into halftime down 6, they battled back and would dominate the fourth quarter, outscoring the Wings 20-9 in the final period to clinch the 81-72 win. Dearica Hamby again continuing her great play, scoring 22 points, grabbing 12 boards, dishing out 4 dimes. Lexi Brown great again off the bench, 16 points, 6 assists with 4 boards. And fantastic rookie, another one in this class, Cameron Brink had a double-double, 10 points, 10 boards. Another 3 blocks from her. Fellow rookie, Rakea Jackson, 8 points. Big team win as they took out the Wings. The Sparks then hosted the Aces and picked up one of their bigger wins of the season, which I mentioned earlier. They beat the Aces by 4 at home, and like I said, Dearica Hamby loves going up against her old team, getting 18 points, 10 boards, 5 dimes. Rakea Jackson, huge as well, Rookie scored 16 points and 5 boards. The small Ari McDonald was huge off the bench with 16 points and really sparked the Sparks. Cameron Brink acted like a brink wall, picking up 5 blocks while scoring 8 points and grabbing 6 boards. Such a presence in the paint on the defensive end. Sparks would go on the road for their last Commissioner's Cup game in Seattle, where the Storm rained on the Sparks 2-game parade, dominating them throughout. Hamby picked up another double-double in the loss, scoring 16 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 dimes. But their leading scorer was 6'7" center out of China off the bench, Lee Giroux. She came in and scored 18 while grabbing 7 boards. I like how she moves on the floor there. Hopefully the Sparks can find more ways to get her integrated into the team. The rookies struggled for the Sparks, though. Brink only scored 7 and Jackson just 3 in that one. Going to the basement of the Wings, or the West, we go to the injury-riddled Wings, where they're really still missing Natasha Howard and Satsu Sabale. The Wings are currently 3-8 while on a 6-game losing streak. The Wings went on the road to take on the Sparks, as I just alluded to, where the Wings would fall apart in the fourth quarter, only scoring 9 points. Arike Aguanbawale did all she could, scoring 22 points while getting 4 assists and 4 steals. Second-year player out of Villanova has had some good minutes this season. Maddie Segrist scored 21 points and grabbed 6 boards, but they'd still, like I said, you can't score 9 points in the fourth quarter and expect to win. The Wings then hosted the Phoenix Mercury in that exciting game I mentioned earlier that went to double overtime. Again, Agumbawale balled out, 25 points, 10 dimes, 7 boards, and another 4 steals. Tira McCowan was a beast inside, 20 points, 9 boards, and 4 dimes before she followed out. But Kalea Copper was just too much in second overtime, and the Wings' losing streak continued. And as I talked about just earlier, the Wings would host the Storm in each of the team's last Commissioner's Cup games. The Wings were just overmatched by a tough, healthy Storm team. Aguambawale went out and did all she could, 24 points while grabbing 6 boards and dishing out 5 dimes. Another big night from center McCowan, had 19 points and 10 rebounds in a double-double. Segrist had 16, Billings had 10.7 boards, but the lack of firepower is really showing. This team needs their stars healthy. They need Natasha Howard on both ends of the floor. They need most of improved player of last year, Satsu Sabale. Any team missing 2 pieces like that, you're going to struggle. That's the recap of our WNBA teams from the past week. And with those Commissioner Cup games finished, who are we looking at? The New York Liberty from the East and the Minnesota Lynx from the West, setting up a hell of a final battle with 2 teams maybe people didn't expect. You might have thought the Sun or the Aces, but you're getting the Lynx, you're getting the Liberty, June 25th. It's going to be a hell of a final. I can't wait for that one. And that brings us to the WNBA stat leaders. The Las Vegas Aces, Asia Wilson, continuing to lead the league in scoring at 28.6. Behind her is a Team USA snub, in my opinion, Arike Aguambawale of Dallas. Kalea Copper of the Mercury sits just behind them at 23.5 per game. Nafisa Collier at 20.8. Seattle's Jewel Lloyd at 20.2. And the only other player at 20 points or higher, Los Angeles Sparks' De'Erica Hamby. Looking at rebounding, who else but MVP candidate Asia Wilson, not only leading the league in points, but rebounding with 11.7. But just behind her is ex-teammate and current Spark De'Erica Hamby with 11.4. Minnesota's Nafisa Collier at 10.9. Connecticut's Alyssa Thomas at 10.1. And how about Chicago Sky rookie Angel Reese? Just showing she's one of the best rebounders in the game, rounding out the top 5 at 9.6 per game. Looking at her playmakers, who else but triple-double machine forward Connecticut Sun forward Alyssa Thomas, leading the league at 8.1 dimes per game. Phoenix newcomer Natasha Clouds just behind her at 7.5 per game. I love watching Natasha Cloud on that team. Las Vegas ace guard Jackie Young has been picking up the slack for the injured Chelsea Gray and is averaging 6.4 dimes per game. Number 1 overall pick, Caitlin Clark in the Indiana Fever. Just behind her with 6 per game, with Seattle's Skylar Diggins-Smith just behind them at 5.8. On the defensive end, how about Dallas's Arike Aguambawale? Not only a great scorer, but leading the league with 3.1 steals per game. Atlanta's Ryan Howard struggled a bit with her shot this season, but is second in the league at 2.5 steals per game. Minnesota's Nafisa Collier on another top 5 list with 2 steals per game. Brianna Stewart is just behind her, tied with rookie out of Chicago, Angel Reese, at 1.9 steals per game. Finishing off with blocks, current block per game leader, Seattle's Ezi Magbagor and Los Angeles Sparks rookie Cameron Brink. They're tied at 2.9 blocks per game, leading the league. Asia Wilson just behind them at 2.6. Phoenix's Natasha Mack at 2. And Minnesota's Alana Smith rounds out the top 5 with 1.9 per game. So there you have your recap on the WNBA. You're all caught up on the finals as well, which could end tonight. That game will be going on tonight. Could have the 18th banner going up for the Celtics. So that'll bring us back to the WNBA where, like I said, in my MVP race right now, I have Asia Wilson leading that pack. I have Nafisa Collier up there with how well Minnesota's doing. I have Kalia Copper up there. I think that's kind of my top 3. And with my rookies, everyone's going to want to say Clark, and I don't know why people are just demanding that. Just because someone's a number 1 overall pick and popular doesn't mean they should win the Rookie of the Year, because right now it's got to be Angel Reese. You've heard me mention her in those top 5 categories. Caitlin Clark is up there in assists, and I think she could potentially leave that if she pulls a big off the shooting and gets Howard or Aaliyah Boston more involved. But anywho, that's a whole nother thing. So like I said, for my MVP person right now, I'm looking at Asia Wilson leading the pack. For rookies, I gotta think Angel Reese, and I'm gonna crunch more numbers for next week to see what other trophies we can line up, predictions for those. But we gotta enjoy this WNBA season right now. We need to stop trying to divide it. You can like Caitlin Clark without being a piece of shit to other people in the league. If you're not a fan of Clark, you need her to grow on you yet. That's cool too, but you don't need to feed her hate. And like I said, just because you like Clark doesn't mean you need to hate the rest of the people in the league. I think this is a bigger society problem than just the league. I mean, you can't control what your fans do. I do like how she kind of turned on her initial comments where she said she just wants to play ball. I know Carrington spoke up against that. You know, their little rivalry with the Sun, the whole mocking of the fouls. But you know, you got a platform, I guess you can do what you can, but these are young women trying to just make it in basketball. So maybe we are asking a lot of them. We should be asking more of the people reacting to what they're seeing on the court. Let's be adults about this, right? Let's try to just let things be right. Let's get some unity. Get Queen Latifah, T-U-N-I-T-Y. Let's get it going, especially after the Team USA basketball announcement. I mentioned a bit at the end of my episode 65 podcast. I don't want to mix that too much because I want to talk WNBA on this one. And like I said, I understand them trying to use Caitlin Clark as a way to grow the game, but she wasn't going to play much. She's not a top 15 USA basketball player yet. And the only person I think should have a snub, I mentioned Enrique Agbamgawali. I know she's like my favorite player in the league. Maybe she could have took Chelsea Gray's spot, but Chelsea Gray is coming back. And if she's coming back as soon as they say, she is one of the best point guards on the entire planet. When she goes, the aces go. There's a reason they're struggling without her right now. But that's my WNBA recap with some NBA finals. Maybe it won't end tonight and we'll get some more NBA hoops. But if it does end tonight, put another banner up for the Celtics. Anyway, thanks for coming out. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hold that follow through. Red City out.